You wake up, check your phone, and nothing bad has happened. Bills are paid, income came in, you didn't mess up. Still, your chest feels tight. There's a quiet stress sitting there before the day even starts. You don't feel broke, but you don't feel safe either. It's like money is always watching you. You do what you're supposed to do, you budget, you avoid dumb spending, you think before you buy things. From the outside, you look responsible, but inside, you still feel behind. You still feel late, like everyone else got the timing right and you didn't. Here's the strange part. The feeling doesn't match the facts. Nothing is actually on fire. No emergency, no crisis. Yet your body acts like something is wrong. You hesitate before small purchases. You feel guilt after spending, even on basics. Rest doesn't feel earned. Relaxing feels risky. You start asking quiet questions you don't say out loud. Why does it still feel like this? Why am I tense when I'm doing everything right? Why doesn't progress feel real? This isn't about being bad with money. It's about something deeper. And until you see it clearly, that pressure doesn't go away. It just follows you, even when the numbers improve. Here's the thing. Your brain doesn't care about spreadsheets. It cares about safety. And for a long time, money was tied to stress, not numbers. Missed bills, tight months, watching balances drop faster than you expected. Even if that phase is over, your nervous system didn't get the update, so you're still in survival mode, not because you're doing poorly, but because your body learned to stay alert. When money once felt unstable, your brain built habits around watching, guarding, and holding back. Those habits don't disappear just because your situation improves. This is why progress feels heavy instead of calm. You save, but you don't relax. You earn more, but you don't feel safer. The fear doesn't fade because it was never about the amount. It was about control. And control, once lost, takes time to trust again. Scarcity thinking works like a background noise. It keeps your attention locked on what could go wrong. It scans for threats that aren't there anymore. Small choices feel loaded. Simple spending decisions trigger stress, even when you can afford them. The truth is, your bank balance may be stable, but your nervous system is still living in the past. It's acting like danger is nearby, even when the room is quiet. That's why this feels hard. You're not failing. You're carrying an old survival pattern into a safer moment, and it hasn't learned how to stand down yet. This number isn't special on paper. $5,000 doesn't change your life. It doesn't make you rich. It doesn't solve big problems. But emotionally, it hits a nerve. Because for many people, this is the first time money stops being just enough and starts becoming something you can lose. Before this point, every dollar already has a job. Rent, food, bills. There's nothing to protect, only things to cover. But once you get close to 5,000 saved, the rules change inside your head. Now there's something sitting there, something that feels fragile, something that can go away. That's when the discomfort starts. You begin checking the number more often. You feel nervous touching it. You feel tempted to spend it, not because you need to, but because holding it feels heavy. Keeping it means responsibility. Losing it would almost feel like relief. Here's the quiet conflict. Saving this amount forces you to see yourself differently. You're no longer just getting by. You're someone with something to lose. And if your identity is built around struggle, that shift feels unsafe. So people stall. They find reasons to dip into it. They tell themselves it's temporary, not because they're bad with money, but because crossing this line challenges how they see themselves. Staying just below it feels familiar, and familiar feels safer, even when it keeps you stuck. When you hold that amount without touching it, Something quiet changes. Not in your bank account, but in how you see yourself. You start to notice that you didn't get here by luck. You got here by saying no when it would have felt easier to say yes. That matters more than the number. This moment isn't proof that you're successful. It's proof that you can sit with discomfort and not escape it. You can delay relief. You can handle pressure without reacting. That's a different skill than earning money, and most people never build it. Here's the uncomfortable part. This shift removes a familiar excuse. When you're always struggling, it's easy to blame the situation, but once you show yourself that you can hold control, even in a small way, you can't unsee it. You know what you're capable of now. That awareness feels heavy at first. It means your choices matter more. It means your habits are real, not temporary. You're no longer just someone trying to get by. You're someone who can protect progress. This is why the change feels personal. Your identity is adjusting. You're not chasing money anymore. You're learning who you are when panic doesn't make the decisions for you. And that shift stays with you long after the number stops feeling new. Once fear loosens its grip, your thoughts get quieter. Not because you suddenly have more money, but because your brain is no longer scanning for danger all the time. You notice this first in small moments. Spending doesn't come with the same spike of tension. You pause, decide, and move on. There's less noise around every choice. Stress changes shape too. It doesn't disappear, but it slows down. Instead of reacting to every expense as a threat, you start seeing patterns. You stop bracing for impact. Your body isn't on edge all day, waiting for something to break. Your focus also shifts. When you're stuck in fear, all your attention stays on today, getting through the week, covering the next bill. Once that pressure eases, your mind naturally looks a bit further out, not years ahead, just next month. Then the one after that. That's a big change. Here's what's really happening. You're moving from defense to awareness. You're not fighting money anymore. You're observing it. That distance gives you room to think instead of react. This shift can feel strange, almost empty. When stress has been loud for a long time, quiet can feel unfamiliar. But this is what stability feels like on the inside. Not excitement, not confidence, just less fear controlling your attention. And that changes how every decision lands. This inner shift doesn't stay in your bank account. It shows up in how you carry yourself. At work, you're a little less tense. You listen more. You speak without rushing. Not because you're fearless, but because you're not desperate. That difference is subtle, and people notice it. When money fear eases, your boundaries get clearer. You're less likely to say yes just to feel safe. You don't over-explain. You don't panic when plans change. You start choosing instead of reacting. That alone changes how others respond to you. Confidence here isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the absence of urgency. You're no longer making choices just to avoid loss. You can pause. You can wait. You can walk away from things that don't fit without feeling like you're about to fall apart. Optionality is the real effect. Not quitting your job or taking big risks, but knowing you're not trapped. Knowing that if something shifts, you have time, you have room. You're still the same person, same skills, same limits, but you're showing up without the weight of constant fear. And when fear stops driving every decision, your life feels steadier, even before anything visibly changes. Right after you reach this point, a new urge shows up. It doesn't feel risky. It feels earned. You tell yourself you've been careful for so long, you deserve to breathe, and you do. But here's where people slip. The pressure you've been carrying doesn't just disappear. It looks for a release. So you start loosening control all at once, spending a bit more, watching the number drop and telling yourself it's fine. You frame it as balance, but emotionally, it's relief. Here's the conflict. Holding that money required restraint. Letting go feels like freedom, and freedom feels good after stress. The problem isn't the spending, it's the speed. You move from guarding everything to guarding nothing. This is how people slide back without noticing. Not through one big mistake, but through a quiet return to old patterns. The stress creeps back in before the money runs out. You start watching the balance again. Tension returns. The truth is, your brain is trying to reward you for surviving. But if relief comes from undoing progress, the fear never actually leaves. It just takes a short break and comes back louder. What changes now isn't your behavior on the surface. It's how you relate to the money. Instead of seeing it as something to use or prove, you start seeing it as something to protect. Not in a fearful way, but in a calm, steady way. Here's the shift. You stop asking what this money can give you right now. You start asking what it's buying you emotionally. Time, space, fewer rushed decisions. That patience matters more than any short-term comfort. Restraint feels different at this stage. Before, it felt forced, like pressure. Now it becomes a choice. You're not holding back because you're scared. You're holding back because you understand what losing control feels like, and you don't want to go back there. You also stop tying your self-worth to movement. You don't need to spend to feel alive or save to feel responsible. The money just sits there, doing its quiet job. That neutrality is important. The goal isn't to squeeze every dollar. It's to keep fear out of the driver's seat. When money stops being emotional fuel, it becomes a background support. And that's when it actually starts doing what you wanted it to do all along. Here's what's worth remembering. That feeling of being poor doesn't always mean you are. Sometimes it's just an echo, a leftover response from a time when money really was tight, when every choice felt risky and every mistake felt dangerous. Your future self isn't chasing excitement. It isn't rushing. It isn't trying to prove anything. It's calmer because it understands what's real and what's emotional noise. It knows the difference between lack and fear. When the numbers improve faster than the nervous system, the body lags behind. That's normal. Nothing is wrong with you for feeling this way. It doesn't mean you're failing or pretending. Over time, the fear quiets, not because you force it to, but because you stop feeding it. Money becomes less dramatic, less personal, just a tool sitting in the background. And when that happens, the pressure lifts on its own. Not suddenly, not loudly, just enough for you to breathe without checking first.